Yo, what's up guys? So we're here to showcase off the new Endymion support in action, and it actually is pretty good. And most of it is just comes down to just getting more spell counters on your board and being able to get out extra monsters. But with Empress, you're able to bounce back certain things, so it can definitely help out get rid of maybe a problematic card, and then of course go for your big boy boss monster, the Founding. Where is he? He's at the very end over here. Endymion, the Founding Sorcerer Supreme. It's kind of like your card right before you throw up your even stronger boss monster that's going to go ahead and basically pop everything else and then have a negate whatever and then be able to bounce back and maybe main phase 2 replace back that pendulum card, and then you're going to get extra spell counters on everything once again. And that's what the deck does, and it is pretty nasty over here. We have one of the newer cards, the Servant of Endymion. And once you have 3 spell counters, you can move 3 of them and spell summon both this card and another pendulum. So you can summon it from the pendulum zone and one monster with 1,000 or more attack that you can place a spell counter on from your deck, which is absolutely insane. And even mixing a needle fiber into the deck can be pretty nasty. Plus, in the off chance you have access to it, you can actually go for a Tempest Magician and pull off an OTK. I don't think you can really pull off an FTK, to my knowledge. It might be possible, but a Tempest Magician really only sees play in cheese anyways. But the Talker guy, he made what I would consider a pretty decent little board there, but it's no match for, of course, these spell counters. I mean, look how many spell counters. We got 1 on this. Obviously, he kind of went for his board. We got 1 on the Servant, and obviously this can negate whatever he wants to negate. And then on this, we already have 5. Basically, anything over 4 is overkill, but it's also boosted to 5,000 attack. We got some more replays, and I'll also give you guys a deck profile if you guys want to check that out as well after. But I think this deck is going to be very annoying to fight against in real life. Obviously on YGOPRO it's much more easy to see how many counters that thing has, but in real life, oh my gosh, you're going to need to bring one of those giant baggies of one of those like spell counter, those little glass beads that people use for other games. I mean, there are times where you're getting over 10 counters on just one card. Like, I've even seen it where people get like 20 counters on some of the Mythical Beasts or even the new Endymions. And at that point, dude, you can't even see what the card effect does because it's absolutely covered in spell counters. Like I said, obviously if you're playing online, it's much easier to manage. You can just mouse over and find out how many counters they have. But over here on the board, we've got 7 counters on Mythical Beast, the Master of Cerberus, which really, like I said, only needs 4 to get like its main effect. And then we also have the Mythical Beast King Jackal, and Magister over here is really great because you're able to remove 3 spell counters from this card, especially summon both this card and another monster from your extra deck that you can just place a spell counter on. There's another card that can get another one from the deck, which can be insane as well. And then it requires it to have over 1,000 attack, which it doesn't really matter. That's all you really need anyways. But because the deck searches out a lot, because it's a 60-card deck, but it doesn't really matter. Most of the cards that you just add another card or do just basically cycle through cards is what the deck does. And you think, oh, maybe the Trickstar matchup would be bad because you're adding so many cards. But that's where the Resonator comes in, and of course, like I mentioned before, you can actually Tempest and beat your opponent. But because of the Resonator, you're actually able to heal up quite a bit, and that really helps out against anything that would be some type of a burn variant. He's going to go ahead and take a bunch of damage, obviously courtesy of the Light Sage as well as the Light Pro. But anyways, double red Resonator in the hand. He's going to go ahead and get rid of that because he's got no card in the other pendulum zone. He's going to go ahead and bust out this boy. And then we got the Servant of Endymion. So this is the one I was talking about earlier. This is one of the newer cards. So you remove 3 and just spell summon our boss monster. Go ahead and put some spell counters on it. So at this point, he can negate whatever he wants. He's going to go ahead and try to Reincarnation. That's going to get negated. He's going to bounce back this card, and then he's going to be like, oh, cool, dude, main phase 2, slap that card right back on. And when I made my other video talking about the Founding Sorcerer, we had discussed that like the card is really good, but we only had like 2 or 3 Endymion cards. But there's a lot more new support out, as you guys are seeing here in action, courtesy of Magus. So shout out to you, Magus. Appreciate it. But yeah, this card is excellent. Pretty much most of the stuff is to support the Founding Sorcerer, But of course, the Empress is not a bad card either. It's, I'd say, kind of a mini boss monster. Like when you bust out the Endymion, it almost reminds me of like a JD. You're gonna go ahead and summon it, and you're gonna be able to pop a bunch of cards on the board, and then on top of that, you just get to negate whatever. So like, it's really dirty. Not only do you get to negate during your own turn, but you get to negate during your opponent's turn as well, because, well, that's the reason why he's even good in the first place. But like I said, the amount of spell counters that you can just put on your cards is absolutely annoying if you're on the opponent's end here. Like, I'm sure that in real life, when people see this deck, they're like, oh my gosh, it's this deck. Because this deck is one of those decks where it takes like 10 minutes for them, like, especially IRL. Like, obviously Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro is a little bit faster. But if you were to like read some of these pendulum effects, oh my gosh, dude. By the time you read it, you're into time if you're playing in a real-life Yu-Gi-Oh! Match. And I know that's going to happen, because look at the card effects on these. Like, every card these days, they've got to have, like, 20 different effects. And, you know, Endymion is definitely going to be one of those. But it does work quite well with, again, Mythical Beasts, because they're all about, of course, the spell counters as well. And then we have Basilisk over here. He's going to go ahead and go into the Borreload, going to go and Snatch Steal his Blackluster, Chaos Warrior, but then doesn't really matter. He's going to go into Mech Knight, Crusadia, Astrum, and this card is basically the go-to boss Link monster. I remember the Blackluster, I thought that was like, okay, that's the new go-to card, right? No, it's all about this card right now, because this card, it basically forces him to attack it, and then it gains the extra attack, and then on top of that, it can't be targeted anyways. But we're going to go ahead and put a bunch of counters up on the board. We got Cerberus at, well, it's going to go ahead and now have 4. And then at this point, we're pretty safe. We got the new Empress over here. And this card is pretty nasty because if it's special summon, you can target another card you control with spell counters and one card your opponent controls. You can just bounce it back and then slam that card right back on the board. And then bam, instantly able to give more fuel for this card or whatever the case may be. And we have 8 counters on that card as well. We got 1 over here, 4 on this, and 4 on that. Like, the amount of spell counters you have is insane. I don't think anyone's gonna play. There's one card that's like it's like a vacuum cleaner, it like vacuums all of the spell counters, but it doesn't matter, you're gonna get that negated. I doubt anyone's gonna be playing that in the first place. But anyways, onwards with the deck profile. I know it's a pretty big deck over here, but the thing is that, well, you've got lots of options here, especially with, of course, the needle fiber plays. We didn't see him synchro, but it is there definitely as an option. You guys saw him go in multiple times with the resonator, not only being able to heal up, but again, the options that you might have to pull off an OTK with the Tempest Magician are quite possible, but most of the time you'll be able to OTK your opponent anyways, or whenever the case may be. So Tempest Magician, I'll go over the effect real quick because I know my cam is kind of in the way of it. But anyways, when it's Synchro Summon, you're going to place a spell counter on it, and then once per turn, you can discard any number of cards to place 1 spell counter on a monster you control for each card you discarded, which you're not going to really use that effect. But you can remove all spell counters on the field to inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each removed spell counter. Now, remember, that is on the field, not your field, which that could be pretty nasty. So if you're playing against this deck, maybe think about it. If you have access to it, if your opponent maybe has like 20, well, maybe you'll be able to go ahead and do a lot of burn damage. Because you guys saw, a lot of times there was like 8 counters, 5 counters, 5 counters, 5 counters. Like, you could easily see people getting a decent amount of counters on their board, especially if they've paid any life points with any of the Solemns. But anyways, onwards with the deck profile. So of course we got 3 copies of Mythical Beastmaster Cerberus, 3 copies of Endymion, the Founding Sorcerer Supreme, the boss monster. We've only got 1 Empress over here, so she's the one where I was talking about you can bounce back the cards. But also, as in the Pendulum Zone, you can actually remove 3 spell counters from this card to spell summon both this card from Pendulum Zone and 1 monster that you can place a spell counter on from your hand. And if you do, you get to place 1 spell counter on each of them. Unfortunately, this one, it requires you to have 4, and a lot of times what will happen with this, it'll actually have 3, and then your opponent will just torrential you and it's GG. But not too bad. Then we have 3 copies of Mythical Beast King Jackal. We have 2 copies of Basilisk, 2 copies of Medusa, 3 copies of Garuda, 3 copies of the new Magister of Endymion. This one lets you grab 1 in your face-up. You can special summon both this card from your Pendulum Zone and 1 face-up monster that you can place a spell counter on from your extra deck, which can actually be pretty useful. Obviously, when the monster goes away, you'll have access to this later down the line. And then we have Servant of Endymion. I really like this one. We're playing 3 copies. This is the remove 3, and then you get to summon this card, and then 1 monster with 1,000 or more attack which is like I would think that they would want like 1,000 or less, but no, dude, just go for whatever boss monster you want in the deck, which is insane. And then we got 3 copies of Ash because well, it's budget now, and then we have 3 copies of Red Resonator, 3 copies of Mythical Beast Jackal, and we have 1 copy of Megaton Magical Cannon. So you move. Okay, this is a little bit interesting. All right, we didn't see it in action, but you remove 10 spell counters on your side of the field, destroy all cards your opponent's side of the field. It's not that hard to get 10. It really isn't. And to be able to go ahead and, you know, pull off a Regeki and Featherstorm, that's pretty legit. Or Feather Dust or Featherstorm. New card coming out soon, boys. Alright, anyways, 3 copies of Desires, 3 copies of Paradox, 2 copies of Terraforming, 3 copies of Spell Power Control. And then we have 3 copies of Wavering, 3 copies of Magical Boost, 3 copies of Magic Lab, 1 copy of Endymion Lab. This is another one of the newer cards, so each time a spell, you get to throw out another spell counter. And this is one where if your spellcaster monster is destroyed by battle, you move 6 spell counters from your field, spell summon basically the boss monster from your hand or deck. And it doesn't require you to, like, it's just level 7 or higher. That's the requirement. So basically, go for whatever boss monster you want. We have 3 copies of Power of the Guardian over here, because it gains 500 attack and defense for each spell counter on this card. And if the equipped monster would be destroyed, but you can remove 1 spell counter from your field instead, so you don't have to remove it from this. The small stat boost, I mean, I don't know if I would consider it really strong, but the fact that it adds another spell counter, and on top of that, you're giving your other things spell counters, can be kind of useful at times. Might be kind of a win harder card, but if you guys want to remove it, you guys can let me know what you would remove in this deck. And then, of course, 3 copies of Magical Citadel. So that's kind of cool. You can remove counters from this card instead. As far as the extra deck goes, we have Ignister, which we didn't use. We have Black Rose, Arcanite. We have, of course, Tempest. This is another great card. You're able to remove a spell counter from your field, target 1 card your opponent controls and destroy it. I like it. It's not bad at all. Because some cards, just keep in mind that they do have a maximum limit. This card does not, though, because it just gains 1,000 attack for each spell counter on it. So if you just threw a bunch of spell counters on it, you could maybe Arcanite Magician them and one-shot them with Arcanite for memes. But then, of course, Tempest Magician, this card, don't not run this deck without at least 1. Then we have the Crusade Astrum, we got Boral Sword, then we got Metalfoes Electrum, 3 copies of Daybreaker. I've seen so many decks. I don't see anyone making this card though. It's because it's not really that good, I'll be honest. That's pretty much why. Yeah, you get to place another spell counter on it, gains 300 attack, and then if a spellcaster monster is special summoned to its zone, you can place another counter. You remove 2. And you get to target a card. It's, like I said, most of the time I'd rather just make something else. And of course, Needle Fiber to go into your other stuff. But, anyways, that's the deck profile for the Mythical Endymion deck, courtesy of Magus Felicis. Thank you, man, for sending this in. Really cool stuff indeed. I mean, I think this deck is pretty good. And now we actually have spell counters as, like, an archetype that actually has a chance. Because I remember a lot of people used to just love running the Endymion, now it's an archetype, but like the support, I guess, and like it was never good. I've seen it a lot of times. It was back when there was a lot more, I would say, players that were jumping into the game. I don't know, they just love the Endymion. It's one of like these structure starter deck things. And I remember that people were trying to make it viable, but now it's actually a lot better. But anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing this. If you did, drop a like on it. And if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more Yu-Gi-Oh stuff. And tomorrow I have an amazing video, but this just came out, so I had to drop this one. But hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you guys got any cool replays and you want to send them in, feel free to send it to AzneyesReplays@gmail.com. And make sure notifications on tomorrow's vid is going to be absolutely amazing. But this just came out, so I had to get this footage before the gameplay aired out, Kappa. But anyways, thanks for watching. Peace out.